Hi there! Today in Motivation and Emotion, we will be talking about social and cultural aspects of emotion.
Social interactions and settings contribute to a social understanding of emotion. In addition, the social-cultural context one lives in contributes to a cultural understanding of emotion. Social psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, and others argue that emotion is not necessarily a private, biological, intrapsychic phenomenon. Instead, they contend that many emotions originate within both social interaction and a cultural context. Those who study the cultural construction of emotion point out that if you change the culture you lived in, then your emotional repertoire will also change. Consider, for instance, the emotional repertoire of people in the United States and China. Chinese infants are less emotionally reactive and expressive than American infants, probably because Chinese parents emphasize and expect emotional restraint, whereas American parents emphasize and expect emotional expression. Those who study the social construction of emotion point out that if you change the situation you were in, then your emotion will also change. Situations define when emotions are most appropriate and expected, and because people know which emotions are likely to occur in which settings, they can select a setting and therefore construct a particular emotional experience for themselves. If you want to construct joy, for example, you go to a weekend party. If you want to construct disgust, you clean the shower. Ew. Also, think about the typical emotions experienced while interacting with someone with superior status, like your boss or a parent. With someone of equal status, a friend, your spouse, or with someone of inferior status, a child, a new employee, an intern. Status differences between interactants define what emotions are appropriate and expected, and because people know which emotions go with which interactants, they can select interaction partners and therefore construct a particular emotional experience.
In this video, there are 4 subtopics: social interaction, social sharing of emotion, emotional socialization, as well as managing emotions.
Social interaction. During social interaction, we expose ourselves to a rich source of emotionally eliciting events and to emotional contagion effects. We also put ourselves into a conversational context that provides an opportunity to re-experience and relive past emotional experiences, a process referred to as the social sharing of emotion. According to Oatley and Duncan, 1994, other people are typically our most frequent source of day-to-day emotion. We experience a greater number of emotions when interacting with others compared to when we are alone. So, what are emotions, and why is it important? Emotion is the part of a person's character that consists of their feelings. Emotions are intrinsic to interpersonal relationships. They also play a central role in creating, maintaining, and dissolving interpersonal relationships, as emotions draw us together and pushes us apart. Therefore, relationships are affected by emotions like joy, anger, and sadness. You might wonder, how does joy, anger, and sadness affect relationships? Joy promotes the establishment of relationships. Sadness maintains relationships when they are separated. This is to motivate reunion. Anger, it motivates the action to break off toxic relationships. Other people not only causes emotions to stir in us, but they also affect us indirectly. This is true emotional contagion. Emotional contagion is the tendency to mimic and synchronize expressions, vocalizations, postures, and movements of another person and to converge emotionally. During social interactions, the emotions of others create emotions in us through mimicry, feedback, and contagion. Mimicry. In conversation, people automatically mimic and synchronize their movements with the facial expressions, voices, postures, movements, and instrumental behaviors of other people. Feedback. Emotional experience is affected movement to movement by the activation of and feedback from facial, vocal, postural, and movement mimicry. Contagion. Consequently, people tend to catch other people's emotions. Now we move on to the second subtopic. Social sharing of emotion.
What is social sharing of emotion? Social sharing of emotion is a conversational event in which one person that has experienced an emotional episode talks openly with another person about the circumstances of the event, their feelings, and emotional reactions. When the person gains attention and elicits empathy, he or she also undertakes a reflective effort to unpack the emotional material, labors on that emotions, organizes it into an emotional story that communicates what happened and what obstacles were encountered, as well as sharing what was taught and felt. There are two types of social sharing: social affective sharing and cognitive sharing. In social affective sharing, it consists of listening, understanding, giving unconditional positive regard, comforting, revalidating self-esteem, as well as providing social concrete help and assistance. In cognitive sharing, it consists of reframing and creating meaning for the event, reappraising the emotional episode, encouraging the abandonment of failed goals, as well as reprioritizing one's goals and motives. People share their emotions with others primarily to better regulate those emotions. Social affective sharing helps regulate emotions, especially negative emotion, by temporarily alleviating emotional distress. It is beneficial in the early stages of emotional event because it provides a state of temporary relief from one's distress, anger, fear, anxiety, and insecurity. However, social affective sharing is not sufficient to attain emotional recovery. Emotional recovery is getting over and getting beyond the distress, fear, or anger, in which requires cognitive sharing, where the other person helps to reframe or reappraise the emotional event. Cognitive sharing is something more akin to therapy because it provides an opportunity for deeper understanding, reappraisal, and more effective coping. Cognitive sharing helps bring distressing emotional episodes to an end. Most importantly, if the social sharing of emotion involves only social affective sharing and not cognitive sharing, then it tends to produce temporary distress relief and no more than that. This is because most listeners are not that skilled in helping the person work cognitively and competently through the emotional experience. Next up, we will have emotional socialization.
Emotion socialization occurs as adults tell children what they ought to know about emotion. It also occurs among adults as well, but the process is best illustrated when adults interact with children for the explicit purpose of teaching socialization information. Adults tell children about the situation that cause emotion, about how emotion expresses itself, and about emotion words or labels for their feelings and behavior. Children learn that a basic emotion can be differentiated into specific emotion, that certain expressive display should be controlled, and that negative emotion can be manipulated deliberately into neutral or positive emotion. When children learn from adults about emotion, most of what they learn fall under the rubrics of emotion knowledge, expression management, and emotion control. Emotion knowledge is about how adults tell children about the cause of emotion. For example, the girls said several times, "My mom is late." The staff member asked, "Does that make you mad?" The girl said yes. The staff member said sometimes kids get mad when their moms are late to pick them up. For expression management, it's about how adults tell children to express their emotion. The staff member said to the boy, who is very angry, he said, "Robert, I can see you are very angry." Emotion control is about how adults teach children to control their emotion display.
For example, during a circuit time, Alex tried to climb all over John, which is a volunteer. John said, if you want to be close, there are some things you could do. You could sit next to me and we could hold hands, or I could put my arms around you, or you could sit on my lap. So different society socialize their children's emotion in different ways. For example, parents of children in the United States tend to praise their children's accomplishment and encourage positive self-expression, while on the other hand, parents of children in China tend to lower down their children's efforts. Guests, relatives, and others, however, generally lavish praise on the child even as they lower down their own children.
The final subtopic for today would be managing emotions. How people learn to manage their emotions can be seen in professionals who interact frequently, closely, and intimately with the public. Social pressure to manage one's emotion revolves around a theme of coping with aversive feelings in ways that are both socially desirable and personally adaptive. Today, we will be looking at 3 types of professionals who have to manage their emotions in a social setting. The first would be a physician. Physicians are not supposed to feel either attraction or disgust for their patients, irrespective of how beautiful or revolting their appearance might be. Imagine being a doctor or a medical student and asked to conduct pelvic, rectal, and breast examinations and perform surgeries, dissections, and autopsies. Such situations are clearly emotion-generating life events, but physicians need to learn a professional affective neutrality, even when blood is spewing out of an artery or they reach their hands into their patient's intestines. Medical students learn to manage their emotions by internalizing the following 5 strategies. The first, to transform the emotional contact into something else. The second, to accentuate the positive. The third, to use the patient. The fourth, to laugh about it. And the fifth, to avoid contact. These emotion management strategies illustrate the culture that is Western medicine. When students rely on that culture for guidance, they in effect reproduce the culture for the next generation of students. The second group of professionals that we would be looking at for today would be hairstylists. The problem hairstylists face is essentially how they can acquire an open interaction style with clients who are often uptight and socially remote. Ones who develop these emotion management skills report higher job satisfaction as compared to those who fail to develop these emotion management skills. Now, how do hairstylists learn to manage their emotions in this way? So basically, hairstylists need to develop an open communication style character. These include characteristics such as expressiveness, affect intensity, empathy, poise, frequent positive facial expressions, concealment of negative emotions. The more natural and spontaneous the hairstylist appears to the clients, the better the job goes. Now, for the third group of professionals that we will be looking at for today is flight attendants. Just like the hairstylist, flight attendants need to develop an open interaction style similar. They have to frequently use deep acting methods that are not too unlike the methods used by stage actors during their 2 to 3 hour performances. Flight attendants learn to replace their natural and spontaneous emotional reactions with an emotional repertoire that is characterized by constant courtesy to their clients. In conclusion, all these 3 professionals that we have looked at for today, the medical students, the hairstylists, and the flight attendants, are a good example of how people learn to manage their private, spontaneous feelings and express them only in a publicly scripted and socially desirable method. Doing so facilitates smooth professional interactions with their clients. We have come to the end of our presentation for today. Thank you for listening and thank you for spending your time.